Welcome to Riverdale After Dark, a podcast about the CW's Riverdale. That's double your pleasure, double your fun. I'm Alex.
And welcome to Hal's Sock Drawer, the dirtiest little home for magazines you'll ever find. Betty, stay out of that drawer. I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And we are going to be talking about Riverdale Season 7, Episode 9, Chapter 126, Betty and Veronica Double Digest.
You know, takes me back to my youth.
Yeah. Exactly. I went to the supermarket to watch this episode, and weirdly they weren't showing it at the checkout line, so I haven't even seen it yet.
Did you grab a double digest from the spinner rack while you were there?
That was what I was referencing, yes, Pete.
There's no better place to enjoy anything than waiting in line for the checkout at your local supermarket.
Mm-hmm. So I don't really have much to say about this episode because I haven't seen it, but I do have a lot to say about the Snickers bar that I bought. So if we could talk about that instead, that would be great.
Are you shipping Snickers and Butterfingers? Snicker finger?
I don't know, man. I'm not shipping the finger. I'm shipping Sneezes, Snicker, and Reese's. All right, why don't we get into a little bit of recap for this episode? So as you can figure out from the title, it's very much focusing on Betty's story and Veronica's story, and we mix and match and go back and forth from there. The big thing that's going on with Betty is that she is really trying to figure out ways to express her sexuality in the 1950s. This has come out in ways like doing a
She wants to be seen.
She wants to be seen. That's what we find out by the end of this episode. Spoilers. But she has done a peep show with Archie across the way from the different houses. They were caught doing that. And then she was sentenced to the direst fate you could imagine, a after-school dance show at which she flashed her underwear, and then her mom kicked her off of the dance show and said, "You broke my heart. You broke my heart, Betty." So that's what's going on with her. Meanwhile, over on the Veronica side of things, she has bought the Babylonium, the movie theater in town, out from under her parents who are still in Hollywood. We haven't seen them. We've kind of heard them a little bit or heard around them a little bit, but they are big stars in Hollywood. They exiled Veronica to Riverdale to teach her a lesson. Clearly that's not necessarily sticking, but she is working. Not working. She's running the Babylonium with Kevin and Clay, and she is gunning really hard for Reggie, who is the new basketball star who has just moved into town. The other little things to mention here are Archie and Betty still live across from each other, as you figure out from the peep show thing. They've struck up a bit of a flirtation. We're definitely exploring that, but they haven't full on dated at this point. Also, the
Coming
other
soon.
Thing you should know.
No, he's barely in this episode. Calm down.
Hold on, a bit of a framing device here. Jughead had a mentor named Brad Rayberry, who is a riff off of the science fiction author Ray Bradbury, who was found dead in the last episode, seemingly by suicide. However, we know he was murdered by a milkman. That's something that Jughead gets brought in on, but is dealing with over the course of this episode, drowning his sorrows in milkshakes at Pops. So that's basically it that you need to know to go in this episode. There's obviously a couple of other little things here and there, but the like we mentioned, it's not necessarily like first half hour is Betty, second half hour is Veronica. It does go back and forth, but we do have these two storylines, so I think we can talk about them separately. However, first, I want to take questions from any of you guys. Pete, it seemed like you...
I just have this is the corrections. After you do the recap, this is the corrections
you do the
part.
Corrections of the recap?
Yeah,
Great.
because you missed it. He wasn't drowning his sorrows in milkshakes. He was drowning his sorrows in the readings of his fallen hero. And then he was also drinking milkshakes. Okay, so
he was having an alarming amount of milkshakes. I just got
again.
No, he was having a regulation amount of milkshakes. It just
I am
all
not
the reading
lactose intolerant. I'm very lactose tolerant, in fact, but that is too many milkshakes for the human stomach to handle. That's all.
I mean, I hate to keep ringing this dairy alarm bell, but we have a dangerous amount of dairy on this show. Mm-hmm. It's claiming victims left and right. The milkman's the problem here.
It's all big milk, man. Don't you see what's happening, dude?
You know, a major ingredient in a milkshake is milk. Yeah. It's just the shake you're missing. Yeah.
Since when?
And pop is that
they're in 1955 right now, so just to make sure, they used milk in the milkshakes, right?
Yes, they do. And milkshakes, there were cows, sadly, involved in an earthquake, and that's when the first milkshakes actually were made.
God. Stop with this.
They shook them right up. And
all right, so, the Double Digest.
Milkshake, it's bringing my boys to the yard.
The Double Digest is great because, they also use the same kind of like fonts on the title cards for Betty and Veronica, pulled right from the kind of Archie comics style. So that was really cool to see.
I think we should say what a Double Digest is briefly. We just sort of referenced it, but in grocery stores.
That's what Jughead is doing over the course of this episode. He's digesting the milkshakes, probably throwing them up, and then having to digest again. So
no, I think there's an episode later this season with a Jughead double diarrhea that we're going to get. It's like
almost definitely.
Twice
Pete
as
loves
much.
This. Pete, I can't believe how much you're loving this.
This
my
is
goodness.
So fun.
Well, it is weird how many milkshakes he drinks. Even Pop's like tired of making milkshakes, and that's
Pop's
just
like,
one of his
let
whole
me
things.
Go home. I haven't seen my granddaughter in weeks. Where is she? Is she just
Traveling
a special guest
time.
star in my life now?
Wow, Alex still burned by the tab of the special guest star, even though we're going to get her next episode, I want to say.
Yeah,
Alex?
next episode. Yeah.
Great. But Double Digest is Archie comics were normally served to us in the larger regular comic size.
Real quick, just a couple of questions here. So Pete and I had talked about how we would go to like the supermarket checkout and get a Double Digest of Archie comics. Did you have a butler bring you your Archie comics on a silver tray? They served it to you?
Yeah, reveal it.
Please. The silver tray is for the plebeians. I had a platinum tray for Double Digest.
Wow, flexing on us. That's weird because you also drank from a well. You know what I mean? There's a lot of,
artisanal water source is what we call it. Good for your artisanal teeth. But what I was saying is a Double Digest is ironically, a smaller version of the comic, but you got it at the grocery store checkout. It was a very thick volume, which could last you in the summertime when I was out in the country. For weeks, I could read a Betty and Veronica Double Digest for truly weeks. Great. It was definitely my biggest way of experiencing Archie comics before Riverdale.
I mean, same with me. We talked about this on probably like the first ever episode of the podcast or something, but my first experience with Archie comics was when I'd have sleepovers at my friend Josh's house. He would have shelves full of the Double Digests. And while I was waking up before him and waiting for him to wake up, I just like
normal
reach from
behavior.
my spot on the floor over to his shelves, read the Double Digests just for hours.
Some might say you would get up early to do that.
No.
Some might say you hated Josh and were using it for his double D's.
For his, wow. I would.
Yeah, Josh, my made up friend who was me.
Yeah.
You're Tyler Durden.
Yeah, exactly.
The Josh person.
More seriously, yes. I think that is people's first encounter with Archie comics in a lot of senses. Maybe not in the modern era, now that, frankly, Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa and Riverdale, the show, has really reinvented Archie comics in a big way. But those are still published. They still exist. And I do think people still enjoy them and love them and pick them up and read them. So I will say I was a little bummed to that point that we didn't get like Betty's story full stop, then Veronica's story, but the back and forth. Because I was kind of expecting and hoping for like that literal Double Digest. I understand why they didn't do it from a TV structure perspective, but I kind of wanted that. And I kind of wanted them to lead into it.
They probably had it set up that way, and then someone was like, saw it and was like, yo, this sucks. You better start cutting this up a little bit at a time here, because
that's how TV works.
Yeah, you can't just do.
Yeah, hey, I know we did this whole episode, but this sucks.
Yeah,
do it differently.
Yeah. Cut it up.
No problem.
Cut it up.
We have the
fix
time.
It in post.
We have
we'll
the time on our
post.
TV schedule.
The network that Pete runs will be like that, coming soon.
Yeah,
you're taking over for Zaslav. I mean, I didn't in the Double Digest comics. I believe they went back and forth more. It wasn't just like half and half. So like I wasn't expecting.
But
this
it was like a couple of different stories, is what I'm saying. It wasn't like an ongoing serialized story. Obviously, we're dealing with something different.
Yeah, and like Riverdale naturally tends to cut back and forth. Honestly, the fact that this was in larger chunks than the usual show when it came to storylines, I did feel like made it feel different. The thing that I was going to point out as being sort of interesting / strange was Betty dealing with like very like big issues, cultural issues, repression from the 50s, like really talking big philosophical ideas of like finding yourself, being seen. And Veronica's like, just trying to run this funny business.
There were some thematic ties there, and we certainly ended up to jump all the way to the end of the episode to this place where Betty and Veronica in very different ways are both exiled from their families and off on their own and heading to whatever the next stage is. So there was a connection there. But you're absolutely right. There was definitely a total dissonance between what was going on with Betty, the structure of her story, and Veronica's story, which was hilarious. I just want to take another break here at this point in the podcast to take some questions from anybody that has one. Justin, you have any questions? Justin?
I'm going to yield my time to Pete.
Pete. Oh, I see you're raising your hand. Pete,
I was going to say the crossover point for both Betty and Veronica was coming to Jughead for help. You know, he was the clear person that, really helped them in their time of need, in their moment of crisis, if you will.
Yes, and that's why your "this sucks, let's rearrange the episode" thing makes absolutely no sense. It was just structured so that both stories were running simultaneously.
Very well structured, yeah.
Yeah.
And it is funny, Jughead has this sort of like wise old man on the mountain role in Riverdale, both the town and the TV show. Because he's like, hey, I found this weird book or this weird like movie. And he's like, yeah, I know all about it. I'm always seeing stuff and reading books. And he has all the information.
He's sitting in front of a pile of books. You know what I mean?
He's basically
he's the human
library.
internet. He's the human internet.
Yeah.
Right
he's essentially the way that they play him is he's the drunk, sad source that they have at a bar, except he's drunk on milkshakes is essentially what's going on here.
Yeah. Or drunk on knowledge from the books.
Absolutely.
Nice. Really downplaying
Pete,
the milkshakes.
I just want to mention, let's get this out of the way up front. I think this will be a good way of setting up things. I know that you're saying like they both go to Jughead is like a tease toward Bughead. That's what you're getting at, right, Pete?
I don't know if I was saying that.
We do get a Betty and Jughead scene in this episode, and we do get a Betty and Jughead fantasy kiss in this episode, so that's going on. Yeah. I'll tell you what, I am more sure than ever after this episode that, and I'm going to say this, and maybe I'll take it back later, Archie Endgame.
Oh, 100%.
Stupid thing to say.
I'm sorry. I have been very hesitant to talk about this other than Shody being Endgame, but I feel like we're almost halfway through the season at this point, and everything that they did in this episode, and I'm sure we'll delve into
not everything, my friend. Oh, not everything.
It's still open. This is Riverdale. Anything could change at any moment.
It's still a possibility, and when Betty needed help, went to Jughead helped. Also,
absolutely. Anything could happen.
Let's just get this out of the way. Also, the part where Jughead is now going to be teamed up with the cops solving crimes. I mean, Betty can only stay out of that awesome area for so long before she's going to be like, yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities for a team up. But also in this episode, to your point, we did see historically how Betty has a thing for Archie. And again, that is something as a kid you fantasize about things until you actually get that, and then you realize maybe this isn't what you wanted and maybe it's something else.
That's definitely what they're getting at. So wait, are you saying that Cophead is Endgame? Jughead and the cops?
No, I'm saying that
forever
Bughead,
together.
Bughead. head.
Yeah, and just to be clear, when you're talking about like the things that you dreamed about as a kid, maybe you get to a later place where it's more realistic. Like, let's say if when I was a little kid, I lay on my friend's floor reading his Archie comics and always wanted to talk about Archie comics, and several decades later, I'm on a podcast with 126 plus episodes.
Couple of Joshes.
Couple of Joshes.
Yeah. Wait, are we all? Does that mean we're made up, Justin? That we don't exist?
I'm
That's
a master of voices, is what I think we're learning.
Oh my god, that would be so sad if I was a voice in your
So we got
so sad.
Oh, pretty good.
Thank you.
Seth Rogen played the role of Pete. So we got Alex's first sexual memory. Pete, what milkshake were you fucking in your first sexual memory?
Oh my god.
Okay,
hold on. I actually should we talk about Betty's storyline first? I mean, I feel like that's definitely. I kind of wanted to talk about Veronica's first because that's the lighter storyline, all told. And there's a lot of other things that are mixed up, but it sounds like we're getting into Betty's storyline first. So the whole thing is she's being interviewed by Dr. Werthers, who is trying to find out her sexual memories and who she's sexually attracted to.
Child it's just awful.
And it's at the cajoling of Alice, who really wants to help and heal Betty so she can be a normal person who gets married. But what Betty realizes by the end of the episode is not only is this probably feeding into Dr. Werther's sexual fantasies, he has a copy of Lolita in his desk drawer, but also that's not what she wants. She wants to do something more. She's not necessarily against a family, but she wants to do more and other things with her life, and she doesn't want to be put into this box that society wants to put her in. So that's the overall message here.
Yeah.
I will throw out there, I do think, like you said, Justin, I thought there were some interesting ideas they were dealing with, but they were dealing with so many of them in so many different ways that some, in my mind, went wildly awry, and some of them worked and hit, but I laud them for trying these things, but I wish it was a bit more coherent in terms of thematically what they were going for.
I hear you on that, but I also think they may have been purposefully doing that to show how chaotic it is when you're at this age and you're just at the vulnerability of everything that's going on, all the confusion, all your hormones rushing. I mean, was never a teenage girl, but like I think that's the idea here. And she just has this rush of things. She can't, Werthers is like, what do you think about sex? And then we just see like a million of her sexual thoughts just stacked on one on top of the other. But I think by the end of the episode, despite all the creepiness, despite all the ways that Alice and Hal are awful to Betty, she emerges free of Werthers, who she dispatched by her own power. She is free of Alice, who bailed on her in maybe the most immature thing that's happened on Riverdale, where she's just like, I'm not your mommy anymore. Like, she walks out of the room, I'm like, that's very strange. But now Betty is free to do what she wants and be who she wants without these two things that have been sort of crushing her down. And I think we're setting up for, I've talked about sort of the youth rebellion theme of this season. She's maybe going to be the leader of that, I feel like, coming out of this episode.
Well, and to Pete's point that he was making earlier in terms of like getting Betty into the whole mystery thing, we do get a little bit of a note of the classic Betty here when she breaks into Werther's desk and she pulls out a bobby pin out of her hair and she breaks in. And this is something we talked about a lot on the podcast. I think even though these feel like different characters and sometimes they're acting like different characters, there are these moments that very specifically and very obviously riff off of things that we know from the show, and they hit hard because we miss them and we want to see them. And like Betty being investigator Betty, that is this slow march that we're getting towards the Betty we know, towards her building herself rather than having somebody else build her up. And I think that's exciting. We also get a moment earlier in the episode, and I'm forgetting exactly what she says. I think it's when she's talking about how she doesn't just want to have a family. She wants to be something more and do something more. And I saw some people take exception to that online.
But she also said, and have a family.
Yes.
And or not just one or the other.
I think that's the thing, is I don't think she was being dismissive towards like, family is gross. She was saying this box of like, well, you get married and then you become a housewife and that's all you do with your life. That's what she wants. She wants choices. Maybe she ends up at that place where she is married.
Yeah, she wants to be able to decide her...
Exactly. Well, what I was going to say, though, is there's this very light rendition of the Riverdale theme that plays in the background that, again, is when I think these like very blunt moments of we are getting these characters back to the characters we know. It's going to take 22 episodes, but we're getting them back there and working them and building them up again and seeing them develop in a way we didn't get in the first season because we were right into it. So that is exciting to me, and I'm enjoying that.
I don't know if I'm enjoying it, but I do agree with you that they are building these characters towards the present, towards the people that we know. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Can I mention something about that, Pete? And this is not like attacking you whatsoever. I think this is just about your personality. We did this other podcast about Sweet Tooth called Candyman, where we talked about Sweet Tooth and we tried a piece of candy. You love candy and you're addicted to candy and you wanted the candy right now. And Justin and I were like, okay, we're doing it in the second half of the episode. That's where we're reviewing it. But that's your personality, is like you want the candy now. And
you want candy now.
And I think that's the same thing with Riverdale. Like you
I want the Riverdale. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
That's why you could never become like a candy baker, because you'd eat all the ingredients.
Candy baker. Don't bake the candy.
Dude, I could have candy to eat along the way as I'm making other candy.
It's usually
I could be a candy baker, Justin. Don't take that away from me.
No, because when you're getting the like nougat ready to go into the whatever goes into,
you have two nougats. You have the one you eat
cooking.
while you make.
I think it's cooking. It's not baking.
You probably throw it in the oven.
I guess like you bake a cookie for like a Twix bar.
You're getting focused on the wrong part.
Yeah, get out of here.
Yeah,
that's the concept of the podcast, Pete.
But before we move on, because Pete, I know you have something else you want to say.
Yes.
I do think
I have a lot of things.
I know, but I feel like you want to talk about something completely different as per usual. But
no, I want to talk about what he started to talk about in the whole kind of Betty part.
The Betty part I want to talk about was that what I liked about her story is it really highlights the real cultural trap that existed back then, and sort of, has through all of time. The idea of like teenagers want sex. You can't have sex until you get married. Then you're married and then you have kids and then suddenly your life is out of decisions. And I like that she identifies that here, like where she's feeling like, hey, I want to have sex. Everyone's like, no, not until you're married. Alice dropping the wedding mags. She's like, you know what? I see the trap. She finally is aware of it and is able to remove herself from it as she moves forward in the episode.
The thing. Go ahead, Pete. Sorry.
Thank you. Jesus Christ. I think that.
Gotta have your candy now.
Shut up, man. So I think that it's one of those things where, yes, I can understand what people are being like, yo, what the fuck? But it was this nice kind of awakening for Betty, this realization of like wanting to be seen and kind of like going through that. Also, the fact that I enjoyed the fact that it was kind of also this thing about boys and girls, and even the shitty doctor was like, that's what boys think about sex, girls don't, and it was just like a lot of what you were saying, Alex, a lot of different kind of ways you can kind of put people in a box and categorize them and kind of dismiss them. But I think what was nice was she was not only breaking through all those, she was doing it in a way that felt very modern, which was cool, which also gave this hint of like, we are building towards the present, which gave us hope of like, we won't be stuck in the 50s forever. But what I really appreciated was the fact that we got to kind of like see what she was thinking versus what she was saying. It was hard to watch though, because it was like, Betty, don't tell him the truth. Stop talking to this fucking asshole. And then finally, she did kind of get to that conclusion, but it was hard to kind of go along the ways. And, as much as, I'm a bughead, I thought it was very funny of the show, of her first kind of like sexual thought is her and Archie playing doctor, the board game, instead
Operation.
of Operation, which is kind of playing doctor, which I thought was kind of a fun twist.
So just to mention that moment,
funny.
I think there is something weird about the line and the pairing of that moment. I think the way that I took that line, first of all, by the way, those are two different actors than the actors who previously played young Betty and young Archie, which threw me a little bit when I was watching it, because I was like, well, that's not them. Those are different
that's
people.
Hilarious that you were like, those aren't the child actors.
I think, as far as I know, I believe the actors who previously played young Betty and young Archie on the show are now like mid to late teens.
Yeah, so I was going to say, they
that's
grew
how
up,
time
Alex.
Yeah, Alex, take it easy. Show's been on for a while, bro.
They're like bonsai. You got to clip their toes to keep them small.
Oh, my God, dude.
That's what I do with my kids, and they're adorable.
Yeah, I hope your kids will have that day where you just say, I'm done being your dad and walk away. Give them a chance.
Oh, my God. That was dark. Anyway, that threw me for a little bit. And I also do think the pairing of, like, what's your first sexual memory with these two actual little kids threw me a little bit and made me a little uncomfortable. Creepy. Particularly because I think, like, what I took from that scene, and the reason I said Barchi Endgame earlier, is I think that's an indication of, like, that's her first crush. Like, that's her first romantic memory, not necessarily sexual memory.
Well, but I think, we're adults. So we think about sex as like, oh, sex, I know. But I think, when you're thinking about, like, it's not as a kid, you're not like sex. Oh, it's like, what is this feeling inside me? And I think the point of that scene wasn't that, like, suddenly the children wanted to, like, start making out. It was like, whoa, my feelings toward this person are different than anything I've ever encountered before. So,
and it's kind of like this buzzer that's going off in this board game right now.
Yes, yeah. I understood the intention of the scene. I think that pairing with the line of what's your first
sexual
like you did.
Memory. That's why we're bringing it up.
No. I think there was another. Not to plus up the lines, but like I think there was another line potentially they could have done there that would have made the intention a little clearer. I understand how it worked, so it's fine. Let's move on. The other one.
Would you rather they were playing like Yahtzee? Would that have
been Yahtzee? Or
oh my God, a word game.
Trouble with the problematic bubble.
Ooh, Trouble. Yeah.
Apples to apples. Come on. Come on.
All right, this is getting really creepy.
What's real quick? What's your first sexual memory, Pete? I don't think you said that.
No, that's.
Yeah, he was about to go into the milkshakes that he used to have sex with.
Let's stop talking about this. So the one big thing that I would say, and it sounds like I was way more negative about this particular storyline than you guys were, but I also think, and this was purposeful, I think, but it was much more sedentary. It was less active than the Veronica storyline, and I do think that was a direct contrast that they were making. But I don't think the tete-a-tete Werthers going up against Betty was as exciting or interesting to me as everything else that was going on in the episode. The scenes where Betty was more active were very interesting. Her showdowns with Alice were good.
Breaking and entering line
was
that was fun. Like she was like breaking it, and then like.
And we did shake it up with like these fantasy sequences that she's having. But,
yes.
But yeah, I don't know. It didn't pop to me as much
hilarious
overall as I wanted it to. I appreciated where it ended up, but every time we cut to the Betty scenes, I like Betty. I wanted to get back to the Veronica scenes. That was my main impression.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's interesting because I really liked how they were different. They were more different than I thought they were going to be, but I liked being able to go back and forth between them. And I thought the fact there were only two storylines we were juggling, really, or three if you count the Jughead bookends, it really gave us time to think about Betty's issues and then have something that was a little lighter and fun as a little Veronica sorbet.
Let me throw something else out that has set certain parts of the internet aflutter or angry. Oh. Whatever the opposite of a flutter is. But the scene where she's talking about her most frequent fantasy and she says, I'm the teacher and I'm making out with somebody or seducing them. And she seduces Archie and it turns out to be in front of the class. People are pretty upset because, if you remember back in season 1, Archie was molested and assaulted by his teacher, Miss Grundy. And they think that is a reminder of that. I wanted to throw it out to you guys and get your take on it, see how you felt about it.
I didn't connect that, but now that connection's made, that's pretty dark.
I don't think so because it's not about Archie. It's about Betty. So, like, the fact that it's not like an intentional reference to that time. I think it's about Betty's idea. And like Betty talks a lot before that scene about how like, she thinks about this all the time. And so naturally school is a hotbed of sexual repression and sexual ideas for kids, for these teens that they're going through. So naturally that's where it's set. Like I understand. I think that's more of a coincidence than a connection. And I also think that it's not just about Archie. That's just the person that she is attracted to the most. It's about all of her fantasy objects. So like, I did not see that, and I don't think that was at all the intention.
Yeah, I think they're just talking about the show doubling down on this sort of thing that was already an issue that people have talked about a lot. But I understand what you're saying as well. There's also the extra added disconnect of these are like mid to late 20-year-olds who are playing teenagers, and we're talking about them as they are teens, and they are, of course, having these sexual fantasies that they're talking about. So Betty isn't actually a teacher. So there's a lot of stuff going on there that I think mixes up the argument a little bit. But I do, at the same time, appreciate anybody who was upset about this and understand where that's coming from at the same time. Just wanted to bring it up and talk about it on the podcast. Any other notes from... one thing that I wanted to throw out there that I think we kind of got in the previous season, but get pretty much confirmation here, is in terms of by Betty, or at least by Curious Betty, in terms of her feelings and attraction towards Veronica. That's much more explicit than the FBI agent that I'm totally blanking on from the previous season, who was clearly like gunning for her in a very specific way.
Cat briefcase.
Cat briefcase. No, not cat briefcase. No. The lady.
Yes.
I don't know why. It was played by Sophia Tatum, and I don't remember the actual name of the character for whatever reason. But anyway, she expressed interest in Betty. Betty was certainly flattered and like kind of intrigued by it, but we didn't get confirmation here. Here we did get confirmation, and that's something that Lily Reinhardt, I think, has been very outspoken about. So I'm glad, if she is the one that pushed for that they got to include that storyline this season. And also make it less of a big deal than I'm making it right now on the podcast. What else? What else? Any other notes from the Betty storyline before we move on to Veronica?
Is it Agent Drake you're talking about?
Agent Drake, yes, thank you.
From the Betty storyline, I mean, Hal's porno mag collection, I thought that was such a funny little sideways way at it, and I think it helped illustrate the point she was talking about. And then, like I said, the way that the Betty ends this, I think, makes the awkwardness or touching on subjects that maybe made people uncomfortable, made it worth it, because I think the character's in a place to really like be the Betty that, Pete, you're looking forward to seeing, and a character that I think is really exciting and interesting.
Well, what was tough for me about the there was a bunch of stuff, but the Betty mom stuff particularly was really heartbreaking, because towards the end, when she is just pleading with her mom to talk to her, and then we got creepy Hal coming in and kind of shutting it all down. And then that next morning, because what's driving me nuts about the storyline is I want to know if Hal is a creepy murderer and that's why Alice is so afraid of him, or why she shut down as soon as Hal showed up and then was kind of like reset by Hal. So then the next morning, like, Betty didn't even have a shot of trying to reconnect and get,
Well, I think that's the point, though. It's not that, you don't have to be a serial killer to be a controlling, like, crushing, repressive dictator in your home. And I think that's what the idea is, like, how come they're about to have this connection moment, Alice and Betty, and Hal comes in and is like, hey, shut this down. This upsets my personal kingdom here that I'm in command of, and I don't like it. And then that changes everything and truly destroys this a moment they were about to have. And then later, the repercussions of it are Alice is like, I'm not your mom anymore. Yeah,
I guess what I want to know is he just a shitty father or a serial killer pushing an evil agenda?
I think he's potentially both, but he's at least a bad partner and a product of his era, you could say. But like, it's not an either or.
Well,
I'm not defending him.
No.
But the point is a larger theme. It's
exactly.
Not just Hal's a bad person. It's like this system is repressive and must change. And I truly think that's what the point of this season is.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think the other aspect that you're responding to, Pete, is the getting back to our expectations. We know that Hal is a serial killer from previous seasons. So what we expect out of this, and we've already speculated here on the show a couple of times, is like, oh, Hal is a secret serial killer. He's part of like a milkman conspiracy or something. That might be what we're expecting, but it might be exactly what Justin is saying, which in certain ways is even more insidious and even more just terrible for society. So there you go. Not to plus up serial killers necessarily.
Yeah, you're always on the side of serial killers, man. It's creepy.
I mean,
yeah, they're sometimes the heroes of the particular show we're talking about.
potentially. But I do think at the same time, there seems like there was something in the past, because there's a moment where the way the Major Admic plays it, at least, that Alice seems about to tell Betty something when Betty very specifically prompts her to say, what is it? What happened? So it doesn't need to be Hal killed a bunch of people.
Yeah, it was tough because we were
small.
almost at a great moment that could have really helped us, and then the fact that it was taken away from us was tough.
But it could also be as simple as Hal put an end to my relationship with FP, and the kid that they had was sent away for adoption. Like, it can be a very regular thing. It doesn't mean that Hal necessarily has a bunch of bodies hidden somewhere.
Yeah, by the way, what you just laid out is not 100% regular, but I get your point anyway.
Yeah. Well, yes, but I guess I mean, not
the regular thing. You had a secret out-of-wedlock child with a biker gang guy who then had to escape to Toledo to get away from my serial killer husband. That
more often happens than in the real world than people killing a bunch of other people, I would say.
Yeah, potentially. Why don't we move on to Veronica's storyline? This was a ton of fun, I thought. So Veronica is running the Babylonium. She is basically blacklisted from Hollywood. They sent her a bad print of some James Dean movies, which ruins her night.
Everybody turns on Veronica fast, starts booing her, throwing popcorn. I mean,
oh my
come
God,
on.
that was the funniest scene. I laughed out loud so hard at that. Just like Fangs basically like ready to kill Veronica.
Yeah. Like,
she
what?
stopped playing the James Dean movie. Cheryl in the front, the head of the Deanisons, the James Dean fan club, screaming at her as well, throwing a popcorn, hitting her head. Just hilariously blocked out scene the entire time. But she eventually comes up with another option after talking to Jughead, as Pete mentioned earlier. She invents 4D movie theaters and plays this
very
quote-unquote
for me.
old movie called The Crawling Eye. I say quote-unquote because Jughead says, that came out several years ago. A reminder, we're in 1955. The Crawling Eye actually came out in 1958 and is based on a 1956 TV show.
Missed on that one.
Doesn't matter. Classic.
Maybe
Riverdale
this episode takes place like 59?
Could be. Honestly, could be. It's Riverdale, so who cares? But anyway, she invents the 4D movie theater. That ultimately leads to some bophobia, gets written up as the top story in Daily Variety, and she, as we mentioned, gets exiled from her apartment. Smithers doesn't seem to really care that much because he's tired of dealing with all of these freaking teenagers, and she moves into the Babylonium, and that's where she's sleeping now.
I have some questions about the Smithers piece here.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you came in pretty hot about Smithers. He doesn't do anything really for her. It doesn't seem like so. When you say like he's tired of teenagers, like he's barely around.
He just seems tired in general. I mean, exhausted actor. But now, let's get into the mind of the butler. Now, she's kicked out of the house. Does he have to stay in the house and buttle for none? For no one? Or does he travel with Veronica as a sort of butler on the road and have to live at the Babylonium with her?
Well, I know you're raising these as questions, but Justin, I feel like just to turn it back to you, you were the one who had a butler who served you Double Digest on a platinum tray.
Yeah.
Well, it's
what does he do now that you're not living there? Or did you bring him with you to Brooklyn?
Yeah, he's my Brooklyn butler. Sidecars were invented to keep your butler. You ride the motorcycle and the butler rides along with you wherever you may go.
He's making the tea in the little sidecar.
Exactly. Oh, please, less bumps. The crumpets are falling all over. I don't know that whole. I like the idea that Veronica is now on her own, like we talked about with reflecting the Betty story. But to have it, the vessel of that be Smithers being like, I don't know. I locked the doors. Yeah. I live here now alone.
Unless I'm remembering wrong, isn't that the same thing that happened to her with whatever they called the dark room back when Veronica owned it? The place under Pops, where her parents exiled her, and she ended up sleeping there for an episode or so. So we're getting some like riffs off of the various storylines throughout this episode and throughout all of the episodes. For a brief second, I thought she had moved into Jughead's train car.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, are we getting back to that? Are we doing a little Veronica again?
Help put that whole thing together. I think Jughead would let her crash there. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
No, too much
Quid pro
diarrhea.
quo, Reese.
What?
What?
Like, I don't know. I was trying to think. Don't worry about it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, first off, the 4D is a hilarious kind of fun bit where, Archie and Reggie get to kind of participate and be big hits. And yeah, I agree, because I was like, oh God, because 4D in real life is a nightmare. So I was like really worried about what they were going to do with this, but I thought they did it in a sweet kind of fun way. And I think that would be cool, going to a movie theater and that happens. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Well, it's a movie anyway, based on some other real life versions of this, right, Alex? I feel like we've talked about this movie before. Matinee.
Oh, well, they did it in Matinee, but there was a guy, I mean, a bunch of different guys did this, but like most famously, there was a guy named William Castle who sort of invented this whole thing, like these gags that they're talking about that he did. I'm trying to remember what it was. Hold on. I think I took it down as a note. No, I didn't write down what year, but he had a movie called Macabre, and he was playing it in London. He was near Lloyd's of London that sells life insurance. It was like, wait a second, what if I took out a life insurance policy on everybody in the movie theater? And that became one of the first things. He did it again for later movies as well. So that's the thing with Dilton giving out the life insurance. I don't remember if he did The Nurse, but he did a lot of stuff like that where like, he'd put seatbelts on all the seats and be like, well, you got to put seatbelts on the seats, otherwise you're going to jump out. And I think it was William Castle. There was also a thing where he stopped the movie 3/4 of the way through, and he's like, if you're too scared, you're allowed to leave now, but you have to leave through what is labeled as the coward's corner. And in the coward's corner, we had you a certificate that says you were too much of a coward, then you had to leave this movie. So he had a lot of stuff like that that he did. And I think there's other filmmakers as well. I feel like John Waters probably later on did some of that stuff. I don't think Ed Wood did with Plan 9 from Outer Space, but certainly there's a lot of stuff around that in terms of interactive movies. So it's not necessarily Veronica inventing it, but this is more Riverdale mashing all that stuff together and riffing on it in a fun way.
Yeah, and it was fun. I thought it was interesting how Clay and Kevin Clavin have been relegated to like just like co-employees, just like being like, Veronica, oh no, and building paper mache eyeballs and doing a great job at it.
Oh my God, they were so good. They were very well done.
Can I ask something? I feel like you guys are more muted about this storyline, whereas I like this one better. Did you like the Betty one better than the Veronica one?
I did. Just it felt way more high stakes. This one I thought was fun, but like it was just like a fun story.
Yeah, it was cool to see the old school 3D glasses and that kind of stuff. And that movie theater was that seemed like such a fun time.
Things look straight out of the side henchmen from Back to the Future movies.
Yeah, and Veronica, like going back and forth with Archie and Reggie seems like you guys are playing hardball, not basketball. You're like, that was a really fun one.
She thought they wanted a race. Reggie and Archie were like, we can't do this
every night. Like,
that's like, I get what you're doing here.
yeah. That was so funny. That was such a fun kind of back and forth there.
That was fun, but I also just visually love the stuff that they did here. Like we already talked about, the popcorn fight where they're just throwing stuff at Veronica. The way that filmed was hilarious. But the eyeball attack, seeing it through the 3D glasses, was very fun. The whole montage scene of Kevin and Veronica on the phone with Hollywood Studios being like, I got RKO Pictures on the line for you, straight out of an old Hollywood movie, I thought was really fun. I just had a really good time watching this half of the show. And I understand what you're saying, but like we got some emotional notes at the same time in terms of she finally convinces Reggie to go out on a milkshake date with her. Then it goes horribly wrong.
She blows it.
Yeah, she keeps blowing it over and over for the business. Ultimately, that's what she kind of realizes is I think what she wants, at least right now, but maybe ultimately it won't be what she wants.
Yeah, I think the big thing here is like, Pete and I are emotionally nuanced people, and Alex, you're just a goof.
Yeah, I just want a goof Patron 3000. That's all I'm going for. Make me laugh.
I also think, Veronica struggles with this and has in past seasons, just like she doesn't have time for the regular teen life because she's like running multiple businesses and getting headlines in Variety. So I think at the end, I feel like that's in the air, and we're going to get her sort of coming back down to earth a little bit.
Well, and I also think this version of Reggie is very sweet as well. I really like how Charles Melton is playing it less as like a dubbed goofball and more as a earnest leading man, which in real life, Charles Melton has become this.
Yes.
He was just a kid. He's
got this huge movie at Cannes. It's awesome.
There you go.
Well, and I think even this episode, he's portrayed as the James Dean. The first shot we have of him, he's like in a towel or in the basketball shorts, just like fully posed in this like very arch way. So like, and I like that for him. I hope we get some of the goofiness back as he opens up a bit, because I do like that Reggie. But I like the way, especially in an episode where Archie's just like absolutely a non-factor. There's no chemistry between him and Veronica. He's just sort of there being like, come on. And that's his whole...
He's very funny, though.
Yes, definitely.
I'm forgetting exactly what the reaction is, but the thing where Veronica's like, can I hire you two strapping lads? And Reggie's like, sure, I guess I'll do it. And Archie's like, there was some expression.
I guess we're doing this. Yeah.
Cajun Abba has, again, made me laugh out loud. A couple of quick notes that I wanted to mention beyond the stuff that I already said. So there's a guy, the Hollywood exec that Veronica talks to on the phone. I'm not 100% sure about this because I didn't check the end credits, but I believe this is correct. The nameplate says Peter Roth. Peter Roth is, and this was, I believe, Peter Roth, who was the former head of Warner Brothers Television from 1999 through 2020. So he's essentially, he wasn't explicitly involved in picking up Riverdale, but like he was there presiding over Warner Brothers Television.
Nice.
The show was picked up and developed.
Shots fired?
Yeah. No. So that's like
positive shots.
Positive shots.
Oh.
Like shots.
Yeah. Dude. Yeah.
Anyway, so that was a fun little cameo. They've been doing a bunch of those this season. I also continue to love Dilton and
Dilton killing it.
Huge
The fourth D is time. What?
Yeah,
shut up, Dilton.
Yeah, his delivery of that line, like, time is the fourth dimension.
Yeah.
Do you mean time?
Yeah.
Great. And Camilla Mendes says, shut up, Dilton. Very funny.
And how about the Dilton volcano at the end of Betty's
that's
fantasy?
the thing. I was like, is Betty going to have a thing about Dilton, too?
Denny is Denny Rising. And also, just on the Midge note, when she's the nurse, I love the ongoing bit of Cheryl constantly being disappointed in Midge. That's just a fun runner throughout the season. And also...
She jumps on Fangs. That was adorable.
Yeah, Fangs. I'm kind of getting into Fangs and Midge. I think they're good together.
Fangs the moose of this season.
Yeah, why not? And the last thing, the Variety headline, just also hilarious that like, oh, it's obviously a slow news day on Daily Variety where they're like, yes, absolutely. Our top story is this movie theater did a thing over in this small town. But most of the sub headlines on the rest of the page are whatever. But the most hilarious one was Lion eats extra on set of Adventure Pick. That was not their top story. Their top story was about Veronica's movie in Riverdale.
Wow.
Yeah, both. I would much rather. I would need to know about what's happening in this small, vaguely haunting town outside of New York City. Well, one big thing I think we should talk about is the Boffo business, and we get to reveal that most of the money the movie theaters make is through popcorn and soda. Mm-hmm. So how do you think this will impact Jughead's ice intake when he's ordering his?
Because the ice is free, you're saying?
I think they're going to have to shut down his extra ice order when he comes to the
man, that's when time catches up to us. You know what I mean? That's not the 50s anymore.
Well,
but it makes sense why he wanted the extra ice. He's drinking so much milk, he needs to somehow smooth out his insides with all that.
Well, there was some way of combining milk and ice into some sort of drink, you know?
Yeah. I love milk.
Sadly, there isn't.
No.
I guess we'll see what happens there. Any other things about Veronica's storyline before we start to wrap up?
I just wanted her to say to Reggie, listen, I'm very much interested in you, but I'm crazy busy right now. Please don't take that personally, because he was, and he felt neglected, but she's just trying to, keep this business afloat because it's the only thing she has to survive right now. And it's like, he's just thinking he's being ignored. So I really just wanted a little connection there,
Well, I think Veronica's, there's no right or wrong here, really, I guess. But, like, Veronica's the one who's messed that up. Like, Reggie, her saying, like, hey, can I get a minute? I think he's like, no, that's not how this works. We're a date. we're done doing a date. It's not like that.
And they're not done. They're just getting started.
100%. Man, Monica is strong.
You think so?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's what we're getting toward, I think. A couple other things I liked. Milk Buds. Shouts to Milk Buds.
Very fun.
Better name than Milk Duds, I'll tell you that much.
Oh!
Take note, Duds become Buds. And then Alice's line, I'm an adult woman, I don't need therapy, I thought was a nice little, like, anachronistic wink in a fun way. But before we go, I think we have to talk about sort of Jughead. We get the sort of bookends here. Him under the yoke of time, ticking, drinking too much milk. He's ready to move on when Sheriff Keller enters and asks a child to help solve this murder.
Well, at least that's consistent with the previous
Suicide.
six seasons of Riverdale, where Sheriff Keller could not solve a mystery without any teenagers.
That's right.
I'd love to see a scene of Keller just being like, I'm sort of out of ideas here. Let me go ask that teenager who wears a funny hat. He's the one.
I think it would be more like, hey, man, you can do this. You don't need Jughead. You don't need some teen. Oh, man, I need Jughead.
He's like psyching himself up in a mirror, like, come on. This is the crime you can solve.
You can
come on, Tommy.
Just solve one.
Just one.
Solve one crime. But, I mean, as we learned, there's never been a murder in this town until Milkman showed up, and now we've got a second. So I guess we'll see, but I think it's pretty clear Cophead is rising.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up here, who was the MVP of this episode? Justin, you want to go first? Who was your MVP?
Yo, Betty, all day, day. Love to see it. Great Betty episode. Lily Reinhart.
Took mine, man. That's BS.
Well, you don't even pick that anymore. You don't even pick Betty.
I was going to pick it.
Well, so you should have gone first.
I wasn't.
I like, contrary to you, Alex, I really did enjoy the Betty storyline, and I liked that it was a little bit on the edgier side, sort of pushing at our expectations and definitely sort of the world around the Riverdale that we've been seeing this season. So I'm here for it. Can't wait for more.
Pete, what about you?
I would like to just compliment Betty and say that the speech that she gives about being seen was really impressive. The range that she showed in this, the kind of like I don't feel comfortable being in a room with you was great. There was just a lot of amazing Betty moments, but because you took Betty, I'm going to say Cheryl. Even though we only saw her a little bit, it was still really funny.
Interesting. In that case, I'm going to choose Eyeball Monster number 2. I don't know if that's Reggie or Archie, but really made an impact. No, I'm going to choose Veronica. I thought Veronica was great in this episode. I thought Camila Mendez was so funny. It made me laugh out loud multiple times. And there is some emotional nuance there at the same time that's going on that, like we talked about, I think is going to pay out dividends over the course of the rest of the season. And if you would like to pay out dividends to us, you can support this podcast and all the podcasts we do at patreon.com/comicbookclub. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Facebook and YouTube. Come hang out. We would love to chat with you about Riverdale, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice to subscribe, listen, and follow the show at Riverdale Dark on Twitter, Riverdale After on Instagram, Riverdale After Dark on Facebook, comicbookclublive.com for this podcast, and many more. Until next time, we'll see you after dark.
Fit as it Miss Twinkletown herself.
Shut up, Dilton.
You got me wanting